Disaster 5. The visitor's answer. The walk home tasted like smoke and dye. I should have made it out alone. I almost did. But Aunt Brinna has a sixth sense for disasters, mine in particular. She'd been closing up the oven hall when the dyed sashes went whipping past, dragged by smug shard cat tails. Curiosity must have pulled her outside. She never ignores loose cloth or loose gossip, and there I was, right in the middle of it. Tangled like a bread loaf tied with too many ribbons, kicking at knots of gold and green. Uncle Vedran limped up to us right after, carrying the one boot the shard cats hadn't stolen. He tried a smile, probably thought it would help, but Brinna's look flattened it faster than a dropped loaf. So now here we were, trudging home in silence, me shedding dyed sashes like a doomed parade float. The long strips clung to my sash and trailed behind in confetti knots. A few fluttered loose, caught in the warm Mireth breeze, and tangled around Vedran's walking stick. Neighbors leaned out their windows to whisper. Someone murmured, parade, someone else coughed turnips, and my ears went hot enough to bake flatbread. We reached the lane. Our oven window threw its steady glow across the path, golden, dependable, completely indifferent to disasters and nieces. Aunt Brinna pushed the door open with one palm and let it close behind us with the finality of a latch. The kitchen still smelled like last night's bake, sweet crust and ash, except now it also smelled like market, crushed glow fruit, mud, and dye. A dyed sash had even made it this far, looped stubbornly around the chair leg, bright against the wood like it was mocking me. Sit, Aunt Brinna said. She didn't point. She didn't need to. The word itself carried weight enough to pin me to the bench. Uncle Vedran eased down on the stool by the hearth and tugged the borrowed boot off with a hiss. He set it beside the oven like a guest no one wanted to talk about. Aunt Brinna stood under the beam where the oven's glow brushed her shoulder. It made the flour dust on her apron look like starlight, which would have been pretty if she hadn't looked like she was about to weigh me like dough on a scale. Kelri. Calm voice. Worse than yelling. Explain. I swallowed. My chalkstone pressed a round bruise into my palm. In summary, I said, trying for brave and landing on squeaky, case file 14 confirms that the shard cats are acting like they own the place. The shard cats, she repeated, tasting the word like it had grit in it. The same shard cats that only children see, and only when there is a mess? I saw them, I said. Everyone did. Well, everyone younger than 30. Tails high. Loot like banners. It wasn't I didn't make them do a parade. Uncle Vedran's mouth twitched. In other seasons he would have let the smile out and rescued me with a joke. Not tonight. He rubbed at the sash caught in the stool rung instead. Aunt Brinna lifted one hand and ticked disasters off an invisible ledger. Bread gone. Glow fruit gone. Laundry gone. Turnips in an aisle like soldiers. And today? Dyed sashes dragged through the square and half the stalls in shambles. And your name in the middle of every telling. Her voice thinned at the end, less blade than bruise, as if saying it out loud made the shame settle deeper. I didn't take anything, I said. I was trying to stop it. And in the stopping, she said, you tumbled 3 baskets, fell into a wagon, tore a sash, and shouted at elders. Each word fell neat and sharp. Do you know what the market sounded like after we left? Laughter, Kelri. At us. We feed these people. We light their ovens. Her voice dipped, heavy where it had been hard. And still they laughed. It got quiet in a wedged, splintery way. I could hear the tiny tick of the oven's heat settling and the slow rasp of dyed sashes dragging under Vedran's chair leg as he pulled them free. Uncle Vedran shifted on the stool. The borrowed boot creaking as he eased it off. He set it beside him with deliberate care, like noise itself might crack the air. His hand stayed planted on his knees, fingers pressed white. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but stripped of every trace of humor. It was nearly dangerous, he said. One more shove, one more slip, and there would have been knives out on stone. Children caught under cartwheels. Stalls broken, people hurt. He shook his head once, slow, as if the picture was still in front of him. It only takes one slip. My stomach did a long, slow drop. Uncle Vedran doesn't go quiet unless it's serious, and his voice had just landed heavy enough to make the air feel thinner. I didn't mean. I know you didn't mean it, Aunt Brenna said, her words quick, almost tired. But good intentions don't pick fruit up off the street. They don't mend nets. They don't change what people saw. What I saw, I said, because the words wouldn't stay down, were shard cats. Bold ones. They like the things we touch with gifts, bread warm from the first flame, fruit we've coaxed, cloth that held glow, there's a pull. It's not a story. It's a pattern. The chalkstone was sweating in my palm. I glanced at Aunt Brenna, her jaw was set hard, her eyes warning me off. My throat worked, but the words pushed past anyway. If the adults would just. Her look hit like a door latch dropping. Adults, she said quietly, are the ones paying for this. Shardcats are strays and nuisances, not thieves. What you're saying isn't possible. The heat in my face slid into my chest and burned there. The kitchen went blurry around the edges for a breath. I wanted to say I was right. I wanted to say I always end up right, eventually, and what good is being right if everyone hates you for it? But the words had too many edges to swallow again without bleeding, and Aunt Brenna had flour on her knuckles and lines bracketing her mouth I'd never noticed until this season. And it wasn't fair that I could see the whole shape of the mess and still somehow be the mess. I set the chalkstone down so hard it clacked. If someone would listen. They listened, she said. She pressed her thumb into the edge of the table until the wood creaked. Then she let her hand fall and looked at me straight as a beam. Shardcats are strays and nuisances, not thieves. What you're saying isn't possible. Uncle Vedran's look held more apology than anything else. Just for a little while, he said. Let the soil settle. I stared at the floor where a dyed sash lay coiled like a grin. My throat felt full of grit. Fine, I said, which meant not fine at all. I'll be quiet. Aunt Brenna nodded once, sharp, satisfied, and turned to the counter. She picked up a rag and began wiping glaze in slow circles, as if the kitchen could be polished back to before. Uncle Vedran stood, winced, and started tugging sashes free from chair legs with gentle fingers. I should have helped. I did, after a beat. We worked in the hush where only the oven ticked and the rag squeaked and dyed sashes whispered across the floorboards. Every sound felt too loud. Every breath felt like it might trip some hidden wire and set the whole house ringing. I pressed my chalkstone flat to the table and dragged the word quiet into the grain until the chalk bit and broke. The crumbs clung to my fingers like dust. For once, I didn't even feel like sweeping them up. The next evening, by twilight, the square was thick with voices. Ovens hummed with their steady glow, lanterns swayed in the warm Mireth breeze, and families spilled into the streets with bread in their hands and smoke in their hair. The day's heat still clung to the stones, but the air had shifted, thicker with talk than with work. Yesterday's chaos still clung to the air, spoken over and over as if fresh. The market still bore its scars. A basket with a broken handle leaned against the fountain, half-mended nets drooped on poles. And a strip of dyed sash dangled from a cartwheel like a stubborn flag of surrender. Children pointed at it, whispering, and each time the sash stirred in the breeze, someone muttered about the mess all over again. Every recounting of the chaos lengthened the tally: bread, fruit, laundry, turnips, cloth. Spoken aloud, it sounded like Aunt Brenna's invisible ledger, each entry weighted like a stone. Children gathered near the fountain, voices bubbling over each other. It was Shardcats, a boy blurted, jerking his hands like tails. I saw their eyes, sharp as shards. Shardcats, an elder groaned, pressing fingers to his brow. Children, Shardcats don't steal. They're pests, yes, but not thieves. They carried the sashes, a girl burst out, braids swinging behind her. Like banners. Everyone saw. She looked straight at me, as if daring me to nod. A woman shook crumbs from her apron. Cloth catches on anything. A gust of wind, a cartwheel, it doesn't take Shardcats. And the bread, another child jumped in. I saw one with a whole loaf. Enough, a man cut across, his tone flat with tiredness. Bread goes missing every market day. Rats, strays, careless hands. Don't dress it up with stories. The words tangled together, children piling evidence on top of each other, adults waving it away with weary certainty. A boy stamped his foot so hard dust puffed up, while an elder shook his head and muttered about pranks. The arguments overlapped, rising and flattening, until the whole square felt like one fraying rope pulled from both ends. I sat wedged between Aunt Brina and Uncle Vedran on a stone bench near the fountain, the square's lantern light washing over us in shifting gold. Neighbors pressed close on every side, murmuring, arguing, trading crumbs of news, until it felt like the whole village had folded itself around the fountain to listen and be heard. Brina's arms folded tight across her chest. One knuckle tapping against her sleeve in a rhythm that kept time with her glare. Her words from last night still pressed against my ribs, not one spark. Each time I shifted, her look pinned me still harder. Uncle Vedran tried to soften things. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, nodding along with the crowd in a way that said he was listening but not joining. Once, when I stirred, he reached to nudge a crumb of bread toward me, as though a crust might distract me from erupting. It didn't. The chalkstone in my pocket itched like it wanted out. I pulled it free and pressed it against the smooth top of the bench, tracing words small enough to hide under my palm. Pattern. Proof. Parades. The stone scratched soft, a secret heartbeat under the louder ones in the square. I rehearsed speeches in my head, each one sharper than the last. If I were allowed, I'd stand and lay it all out. Exhibit A, tails like banners. Exhibit B, stolen bread still warm from the ovens. They'd have to listen. They'd have to believe. The words stacked behind my teeth like a crowd at a door. My knee bounced, I bit my lip until I tasted salt. Across the fountain, the other children caught my eye. Their faces urged me on, go on, Kelri, say it, you always say it. One boy even gave a quick jerk of his chin toward the adults, daring me. My chest swelled with the push of words, but Brina's glare cut sideways, sharp as a knife. I clenched the chalkstone until my palms sweated dust. That was when the caravan rolled in. It began with a groan of wheels on stone, then the steady clop of hoofs. Dust and leather drifted in ahead of the wagons, a smell that didn't belong to Mareth. People turned, voices faltering mid-argument, as lanterns came into view, silver, not gold, their light running cool along the rims of the wheels. Caravan, someone called, not surprised so much as relieved for a change of subject. A baker lifted a loaf and hurried it over to a driver, earning a wave in return. Two men broke from the crowd, clapping an old acquaintance on the shoulder before leading him toward the ovens. Children dashed across the square, braids and boots flying, to chase after the wagons. They hooped when caravan children peeked from the canvas flaps, giggling and waving, and a game started before the wheels even stopped turning. The crowd thinned as clusters of neighbors peeled away to greet, gawk, or lend a hand. I wanted to go too. To tug free of the bench and lose myself in the moving knot of chatter and silver glow. But Brina's arms folded tight, her knuckle drumming sharp against her sleeve, kept me nailed in place. Her silence was as heavy as the hooves. Vedran only leaned forward, nodding along as if nothing unusual was happening. The bustle around the wagons lasted only a breath before the talk curled back to where it had left off. Mireth children swarmed the caravan children, voices tumbling over each other as they bragged. You should have seen it. Shardcats carried the sashes like banners, one shouted. Another spread his arms wide. They overturned whole baskets. Bread gone, just like that. The caravan children gasped and leaned closer, hungry for the tale. A driver frowned down at them. What's this? He asked, voice clipped with travel dust. What's got your square in knots? An elder answered first, weary as stone. It isn't just yesterday. For weeks now things have gone missing, loaves from the ovens, fruit from the stalls, laundry right off the lines. Tools, too. At first, small things. Now half a market's worth of goods in one afternoon. He shook his head. Yesterday it boiled over, carts tipped, baskets split, cloth dragged across the square. But children, he gestured at the eager knot, children call it shardcats. Because it was, a boy burst out, stamping so hard dust puffed up. They marched like a parade. A girl threw her braid back over her shoulder, defiant. Tails high. Sashes like banners. Everyone saw. The caravan children leaned closer, eyes wide. A woman stepped in quickly, her voice tight. That's enough. Don't be filling the travelers with stories. Shardcats scavenge, they don't steal in droves. It's carelessness, or mischief, or both, but not shardcats. She smoothed her apron with sharp hands, as though pressing the matter flat. We'll mend it, as we always do. But the Mireth children didn't stop, their voices rising in a chorus of glowing eyes, stolen bread, and loot like banners. And every word clawed inside my chest, begging to be shouted louder, clearer, sharper. My chalkstone itched in my palm. Across the square, a boy caught my eye again, urging me on. The words stacked high behind my teeth. But Brenna's knuckle drummed steady against her sleeve, and I stayed nailed to the bench. At the head of the line walked So Oravan, familiar to most of the square. A few voices called his name in greeting, farmers who had traded with him before, women who had once bought his cloth. He gave no more than a nod in return. His arms stayed folded, his step measured as if he'd already walked farther than the rest of us could imagine. The silver lantern light caught the threads of his coat, woven subtle, not showy, and turned his hair pale against the dusk. His eyes swept the wrecked stalls, the fluttering sash, the children arguing, the adults shaking their heads. He didn't join the bustle. He only listened, and the noise of the square seemed louder against his silence. The children's protests rose, overlapping now into one pleading chorus. The adults' replies grew flatter, heavier, as though the whole town was tired of arguing. The square filled with the kind of sound that rattles glass. My mouth opened, just a breath, just enough to shape the first spark of the truth. And then So Oravan stepped forward. The square hushed as if someone had drawn a blade across the noise. So Oravan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His stillness did the work, arms folded, shoulders square, lantern light cold across his coat. When he spoke, his words came clipped and certain, like frost catching on glass. The children are right. The words dropped like a stone in water, rippling through the square. For a heartbeat no one breathed. Then the children gasped as one, eyes gone wide, mouths splitting into stunned grins. It was the sound of a gate swinging open after weeks of being pressed shut. They surged to their feet, tugging at sleeves, pointing, voices tumbling over each other, "See, we told you, we told you." But the adults, stared as if the ground itself had shifted. An elder's hand froze halfway to his brow. A woman let the apron slip from her fingers. A man sank back onto the bench as though his knees had given out. Brenna's face went pale under the lantern glow, her lips pressed so tight they trembled. Beside her, Vedran's eyes dropped, shoulders sinking under a weight no words could carry. The shock was not in being contradicted. It was in realizing the children had seen truth where grown eyes had not. The order of things had cracked, and no one quite knew what to do with the pieces. So Orovin let the ripples settle, then unfolded one hand, palm down, the gesture steady as stone. His voice carried clear, though quiet. Shardcat's steel. The words were simple, but they shifted the air. Children nearly glowed with triumph, bouncing on their heels, while the adults leaned in, desperate for the next words to mend or break what he'd just admitted. Rarely, so Orovin went on, gaze sweeping from the youngest faces to the oldest. Always one at a time. One loaf. One glove. One trinket. His jaw tightened. A nuisance. Never more. The children faltered. Murmurs rippled again, half celebration, half doubt. Adults exhaled, as if reassured, though unease lingered in their eyes. Brenna's arms folded tighter across her chest, as though binding herself to her own disbelief. Uncle Vedran's frown dug deeper, jaw shifting side to side. But so Orovin's next words carried weight enough to still them all. Not like this. He sliced the air with his hand, sharp as a blade. Not together. Not flaunting. His tone carried no triumph, only unease. Lantern flames guttered in their glass as if a draft had passed. The crowd, once restless, leaned closer despite themselves, as if needing to hear and fearing to hear all at once. When shardcats gather in numbers, so Orovin said, voice dropping colder still, it means something. And what it means is never small. The words fell heavy across the square. No one dared answer. The children's bright faces dimmed. The adults shifted, unsure whether to cross their arms tighter, argue back, or simply stay still. Even the caravan children grew quiet, clutching the canvas edges as if the fabric itself might shield them. The words hit me like a spark to kindling. I wanted to jump up on the bench, wave my chalk stone in the air, and yell, see, I wasn't making it up. But Brenna's stare pressed the air right out of me. Now the whole square was listening, now, after I'd been the one saying it first. It burned worse than their laughter. Being right wasn't sweet. It tasted sour, like burnt crust. And the way so Orovin said it, short, cold, like he didn't even want to, knotted my stomach. This wasn't a win. This wasn't fixed. It was bigger. Darker. I squeezed the chalkstone until it cracked and dragged one word into the bench grain, jagged and certain. Trouble. The square breathed as one, slow and heavy. And I knew we had only felt the beginning.